All right, it's time to get into lesson 5.2b, right? So I divided this up into two different parts because it was first looking at the idea of evaluating expressions, which means to solve the math problem that doesn't have an answer, right? So to evaluate means to solve. Expression is a math problem, right, that doesn't have an answer. It's a numerical expression, so we have just numbers. We will get to a point here before too long where we're going to add letters, so those are algebraic expressions. But we have to use the order of operations. And we'll look at a couple where we can see where the order of operations is absolutely vital that we follow the correct order. So several of these have come from your book. I've just made a packet for you to give you extra room to work. Once again, I'm going to show you step by step on what I expect from you. The only thing I don't expect from you are the dotted red lines showing you the arrows going down. I do that so I can keep track. I don't expect you to do it, but I do expect you to rewrite the new problems each and every time as I create them. So once again, if I go too fast, please pause the video, rewind it. If you get all the notes down on a problem, you just maybe didn't quite understand it, rewatch the whole entire problem. Rewind the entire lesson. It's here for you to where you can understand it and hear it as many times as you need to. So going through the order of operations, once again, we have for absolute values, square roots, exponents, and parentheses. We ask for several extra presents, right? Then we have multiplication and division from left to right from my dear. And then we have addition and subtraction and Sally. So as I go through these, I have to follow the order of operations or I'm going to end up with an incorrect answer. So I always start by underlining the parts that I have to do first. Now, I have 8 squared, or 8 to the second power, so I know that that means 8 times 8. I want you to write down on your paper when you're showing me your work 8 times 8, because I need to see that you know it's 8 times 8. It's not 8 times 2, which is 16. It is 8 times 8, and therefore that is 64. Once again, you'll see that I am shifting from left to right and right to left towards the center, just because it gets all spread out if I don't. When I look at my parentheses, then I can go ahead and do those also before I write the whole new math problem, because that's part of the absolute value square root exponents parentheses, step 1. So 15 minus 7 is going to give me 8. Now I bring everything else down. Once again, I don't expect you to bring down the arrows, but you can if you want to. Now, what if I look at, well, what about 2 minus 9? Well, once again, I need to keep in my mind that 2 minus 9 is not inside of parentheses, so I can't do that yet. I'm just going to ignore it. Bring everything else down, so I make sure the division is between the 64 and the 8. I bring down the multiplication, the 2, the minus, and the 9. This is the first math problem I expect you to have written on your math paper. Now we're going to go from left to right, but now instead of the first step, I got to go to my second step of my order of operations, which is multiplication and division from left to right. Now notice they have it in order of division and then multiplication. Well, I'm still going to go from left to right, right? If I don't do it in the correct order, I'm going to end up with the wrong answer. So I want to make sure that I am doing the division first, followed by the multiplication. So 64 divided by 8 is going to give me 8. I bring down the multiplication of 2, I bring down the subtraction, and I bring down the 9. That's my second math problem that I expect you to have written down in your notes. And then we go, once again, multiplication and division from left to right. I only have one of those now. So I have 8 times 2, and 8 times 2 is 16. I bring everything else down. You've now written 3 math problems on your paper. And then 16 minus 9 is going to give you an answer of 7. Once again, we always do our addition and subtraction from left to right, and whichever one comes first. Now, if I went too fast, which for most of you I probably did, pause it, write it down, and then do yourself a favor and go back and rewatch it. That was about 2 minutes of me walking through that math problem. If you just rewatch that math problem once you've written down the notes, it'll get into your head on the process in which we're doing. So I did have to sit down because my back's been aching all weekend, but as we're continuing on, I'm going to show you how, if I don't follow the correct order of operations, that it's not going to end up in the with the correct answer on this problem. So when I tell you to stop taking notes, then stop taking notes. But we're going to start out with the problem in the correct steps. So I'm going to follow and look for my absolute value, square roots, exponents, and parentheses. And I see that I have exponents inside of parentheses. Well, that's okay, because I can do my exponents first, then I'll solve for my parentheses. So my 5 to the second power, or 5 squared, once again is 5 times 5. And 5 times 5 is 25. So now I'm going to solve for inside the parentheses, because that's 25 minus 12. And 25 minus 12 inside the parentheses would be 13. Now I'm going to bring everything else down. So I have 4 times 13 minus 6. Now let's say you get confused, you forget the order of operations, your brain just goes fuzzy, right? You're not looking in your notes, you didn't go back in your book to try to check it out, you didn't look at the charts that are in the classroom, and you just decide, well, I know that 4 times 13 is multiplying with big numbers, and I don't like to multiply with big numbers, so I'm going to subtract first. So don't write this down. Let's say that you have decided you're going to subtract first, and you have 13 minus 6. Well, 13 minus 6 is 7. You bring down the 4 and the 7, and you say, well, 4 times 7, that's much easier, so that's 28. So let's keep that in mind. We're going to put that to the side, and we're going to put it in our back pocket, as the saying goes. So instead of just following along with what we think we might do, let's actually look at the chart and say, okay, well, I know I have to do multiplication and division from left to right. Does it really matter? Well, 4 times 13, I know that's bigger math, but you can pick up your handy dandy calculator and type it in. 13 minus, or times 4, excuse me, is 52. I'm going to bring down my subtraction of 6, and that's what I have to do last in my order of operations. That gives me 46. It absolutely does matter. The order of operations is very important. So I have to make sure I know it and I'm able to follow it, because 28 is not the right answer. All right, so I want you to follow the order of operations. I want you to figure out the answer to this, pause the video while you're working on it, come back and check with me. So hopefully you have an answer. Hopefully you've gone through the process. Hopefully you looked at your notes to the first two that we did together. And you started with the absolute value, square roots, exponents, and parentheses, of which you have 2 of those. You have parentheses and you have an exponent. So you're solving for your parentheses. You did 15 plus 3, which is 18. Solving for your exponent, hopefully you wrote down that it is 3 times 3, not 3 times 2, which is 6. It is 3 times 3, which is 9. Then you brought everything else down and you rebuilt your math problem. You ended up with 9 plus 7 times 18 divided by 9. Then, you looking at your chart or your notes or remembering the order of operations, you have to do multiplication and division from left to right. So that takes me to 7 times 18. Once again, a handy dandy calculator allows me to type that in, and I get 126. I bring everything else down. So now you've rewritten 2 problems. 9 plus 126 divided by 9 tells you I still have to do my multiplication and division from left to right. So 126 divided by 9, once again, the first number is typed into my calculator. That's going to give me 14. When I bring everything else down, that takes me to my last step of my order of operations. I can add, and that's going to give me 23. So how'd you do? Right, well, if you didn't get it and you're not sure why you didn't get it, please raise your hand and I'll come and help you, or one of us will come and help you, because that's what we're here for. All right, so I'm going to work one more with you. So this one has a lot to it. Right? None of it is difficult math, I promise. It's just making sure that I can follow all the things that I've learned up to this point. So I have a fraction and I have decimals. I'm going to tell you right now, I know some of you really like to work with fractions compared to decimals. This can be solved using just fractions. What ends up happening, though, is I have to change what my 3 squared, which is 9, I have to change that into an improper fraction. I have to change my mixed number into, or my 2.4 into a mixed number, and then change that into an improper fraction. And all of those extra steps often lead me into making silly mistakes. So if you're willing to just simply change the fractions into decimals, these answers become much easier. But let's start with where we need to begin. We have exponents, we have parentheses, and inside the parentheses, we have exponents. So let's start with our exponents. We have 6 times 6, because that's 6 to the second power. Tells me to write down the 6 twice, multiply them together, I get 36. I have 3 times 3, because 3 to the second power tells me to write down the 3 twice, and 3 times 3 is 9. All right. So when I look at 3/4, once again, if I think about money, that's just saying 3/4 out of the 4 that make up $1. So that is 75 cents. So if I plug in that 0.75 or 75 hundredths into my math problem, my math becomes a lot easier. So once again, I have the 9 divided by, and I'm going to have to bring all of that down because I still have to do my parentheses first. Well, it's asking, well, if I took $9 and put it all into quarters, how many groups of 75 cents would I have? Well, the easy way of doing that is taking 9 in my calculator divided by 0.75. That's going to tell me I have 12 equal groups. Then I bring everything else down. Once again, I'm probably going too fast for you to write this down. It's okay, just pause the video and then continue on. Now, going to my next step of my order of operations, I have to go from left to right doing all multiplication and division. There's only one. So 36 divided by 12, I know 12 is a dozen, and that's 3 dozen, which is 36. So 36 divided by 12 is 3. And then I bring down my subtraction of 2.4. And that takes me to my last step of order of operations, adding and subtracting from left to right. So when I do that then, and I have decimals, I have to remember that my whole number actually has a decimal behind it. And therefore, when I stack them and I do the math, I have to add that decimal and a 0. That allows me to have my decimals lined up. Remember, what we learned before was that I can add and subtract decimals, but I must line up my decimals first and then bring it down. Then I can borrow. 3 becomes 2, and the 0 becomes 10, and I can subtract 10 minus 4 is 6. So I end up with 6/10 as my answer. If I did it all with fractions, I should have ended up with 6/10, which is the same as saying 3/5. All right, so now we're going to be taking all of that information and figuring out how I can take these multi-step pieces in a story problem and creating a math problem. So what they're showing you in 3 different colors. So I've decided to do that the same way for you, marking it with the 3 different colors so I can keep it organized. Right? So what they're showing you in that numerical expression down below is from that information, it says, suppose Mariana and her friends are buying snacks at a hockey game. Hot dogs cost $4, boxes of popcorn cost $2, and drinks cost $2.50. The expression below represents the total cost of 4 hot dogs, 3 boxes of popcorn, and 2 drinks. The different colored text represents each part of the expression. So they took the cost for each item and they multiply it by how many of those items they are going to buy. Through those steps, we could then see that once I did the multiplication inside of my parentheses, I'm just going to add all of those values together and find out how much Mariana is going to have to spend on the snacks. So when I follow my order of operations, once again, these processes become much easier. So in your book, they give you this example as well. They're talking about, well, if I have a lotion that costs $5, I had a candle that costs $7.80, and a lip balm that costs $2.49. But she's going to buy multiple items of each of those. So for the lotion, she's going to buy 5, 2 candles, and 4 lip balms. So then they show you, well, they wrote 5 squared. And for some of us, it would be, well, why would they write 5 squared? It doesn't say anything about 5 to the second power. Well, that's just simply saying that I had an item that cost $5 and I bought 5 of them. It's still going to be 5 times 5 either way. So either way that you would happen to write it on your assignment, it's going to be fine because it should still get you to the right answer. When I see that the candles were $7.80, they're showing you I'm multiplying that by 2. And when the lip balm was $2.49, we're multiplying that by 4. Then we would add those values all together. So when I take 5 times 5, I get 25. And when I take 7.80 times 2 on my handy dandy calculator, it gives me 15.6. And 2.49 times 4 on my calculator gives me 9.96. Once again, I would have to line up my decimals, fill in with zeros and add, or I can just type in all of those numbers together and my calculator is going to tell me that I end up with 50.56. We're talking about spending money. So she spent $50.56 on those items at probably Bed Bath & Beyond. All right. So just checking on how we can solve this answer. I want you to walk through this and see if you can figure out which is the correct answer, and then I will take you through it. Notice that there is a part B on solving the problem that I would like you to do as well. Pause the video, come back to me. All right, so what I did when I'm showing my work is I went ahead and used the different colors so I could identify what we're talking about. Because if you notice, when they present the information, tickets to play cost $10, tickets to a play, excuse me, $10.50 for an adult member of the theater, $19.95 for adult non-members, and $8 for students. But then when they tell you what is being purchased, they flip the order on you because they're trying to trick you. It says that for the members that were $10.50, there were 2 of them. And for the $19.95, for the non-members, there were 4 of them. And then for the students, which was the only one kept in the same order, they were $8. So when I look at the very first one on A, that would be saying that for each of those items, I'm only selling 4 tickets. And that is not correct. So hopefully you eliminated that real quick. So I went through and I started with just my $10.50 and I matched it up that I know there's 2 members. So I looked for 2 times $10.50 and B has that and C does not. So I got rid of it. D has that. So I have 2 of them that are at 2 at times the $10.50. So process of elimination, I now have a 50-50 chance of getting it correct. So then I went to the $19.95 and I matched that up that there were 4 of those. And 4 times $19.90, well, they both have that as well. And now I have 2 that are buying, no, excuse me, 8 that are buying $8 tickets. So 8 times 8, right? 8 at $8. So that's 8 squared, that's 8 times 8. 8 to the 8th power would be 8 times 8 times 8 times 8 times 8. That one's not correct. So B has to be the correct answer. So hopefully you marked that. Then, in order to do the correct answer, you would have just simply solved the problem. So 4 times $19.95 would have given you $79.80, and 2 times $10.50 would have given you $21. And then 6 times 6 is 64. And then when you added them all together, my video is kind of blocking it, but you should have ended up with $164.80. If you didn't get it, don't worry about it. We're going to work through a couple more just to make sure that we have this. All right, so now we're going to be adding one more step into these problems. So we're going to be given information, and then in this particular case, we're going to take some away. It says, an art store sells different sized art kits that include crayons and sketch pads. The table shows the number of boxes of crayons and sketch pads in each kit. A school buys 30 small, 35 medium, and 10 large art kits. Then they return 11 medium art kits. How many boxes of crayons and sketch pads do they have in all? So as I'm looking at it, I see that I have 30 in the small, and that tells me that there are 16 crayons and 20 sketch pads. All right. I'm buying 35 mediums, and there are 24 crayons and 40 sketch pads. And I'm buying 10 largest, and that's 68 crayons and 100 sketch pads. All right, so let's start with the school buys 30 small. So 30 small, I have 30 times the 16, right? I bought 30 and there were 16 crayons inside. And then on the medium, it says I bought 35 and there are 24 of each. However, it then says, well, actually, I'm going to return 11 of those. So what that becomes is 35 minus 11. Now, you might automatically know that that is going to be 24 times 24, but let's just say we're going to leave it as a math problem, right? And then when I look at my large, I have 10 that I buy, and there's 68 of those. All right, so those would be my expressions for each of those. And then when I do the other pieces, now I have 30 times 20 for the sketch pads, the 35 minus 11 times 40 for the sketch pads for the medium, excuse me, and 10 times 100 for the sketch pads for the largest. So now I'm going to solve for the boxes of crayons. 30 times 16. I'm going to add that to my, notice I put it in brackets because it's multiple steps there. The 35 minus 11, then multiplied by 24. And then I'm going to add the 10 times 68. And when I go through my order of operations, I'm going to solve for my parentheses, right? So if I have 24, because 35 minus 20 or minus 11 gives me 24, then I know that in the center I have 24 times 24. When I then solve my other parentheses, then I can go from left to right. So 30 times 16 is 480. 24 times 24 is 576. And the 68 times 10, that's the easiest one. I just put the 0 at the end of the 68, so that's 680. When I add all this together, I get 1,736. What? Art supplies, boxes, schools. Right? Well, this happens to be boxes of crayons. But now it wants to know and sketch pads, right? So the and means I have to solve the other set as well. So if I look at for the sketch pads, then I know I'm going to start all over again. I'm going to do the 30 times the 20. And then I had the 35 minus 11 times 40. And then I have 10 times 100. Once again, my video is going to be in the way, so I apologize, but you should be able to follow along. When I do the center part and I do the parentheses first inside the brackets, I end up with 24 times 40. And then I can do my multiplication from left to right to bring everything else down. And 30 times 20 is 600. 24 times 40 is 960. 100 with an extra 0 behind it, even though you won't be able to see it as 1,000. And then when I add all those together, I get 2,560 sketch pads. So we have two parts we had to answer and multiple steps to do it. Is it a lot of work? Yes. But, you know, life is about doing a lot of work and being able to be successful. And I know every one of you can be successful with these. All right, so now let's look at summer camp. This one has a little bit different once again. All right, so let's start with what we know. So at summer camp, you can buy clothing embroidered with the camp logo. Short sleeve t-shirts are $15 each. Shorts are $18 each, and long sleeve t-shirts are $25 each. Whew. All right, so during the final week of summer, the clothing is marked down to 3/4 the original price. You buy 2 short sleeve t-shirts, 1 pair of shorts, and 3 long sleeve t-shirts. What was the total cost of the purchase? So short sleeve was $15 each, and I'm buying 2 of those. All right, shorts are $18 each, and I'm buying 1 of those. And the long sleeve t-shirts are $25 each, and I'm buying 3 of those. But then I have to solve with extra information. It says it's 3/4 the original price. Well, that's 3/4 of the original, right? And 3/4 of the original, we said, well, 3/4 is the same as 3/4. So that's 7/500 or 0.75 of the original. What does of mean? It means to multiply. So I'm going to be plugging that multiplication of 0.75 in towards the original cost before I figure out how much I spent on the different items that I bought. So I end up with these 2-step math problems for each of my items. My parenthesis is inside to figure out how much I'm going to be spending, what 3/4 of that original price is, and then multiplying by how many of them I'm buying. Then when I do the shorts, now I wouldn't have to do the 1 times, but it just helps me keep track. So some of you may want to do the 1 times. It's not going to change my answer. And some of you may not want to because you like to do it in as few steps as possible. It's all right. Save your pencil then. Then I'm going to do my 25, multiplying by 0.75, that 3/4 of the original price. and I want to buy 3 of those. I know I'm then going to add all of those together to figure out how much I'm going to spend at the end of camp. So when I take 15 times 0.75 on my handy dandy calculator, that tells me each of those items is going to cost me $11.25. All right, so then I plug in, well, 18 times 0.75. Each of the pairs of shorts is going to cost me $13.50. Now your calculator gives you 13.5. It's okay to write 13.5 as long as you remember in the end we are talking about money. And then when I look at the long sleeve t-shirts, they're the most expensive ones. 75 or 75 hundredths or 3/4 of that 25 is $18.75. All right, so now I solve each of my brackets. 11.25 times 2 gives me 22.50. 13.5 gives me 13.5 or $13.50. 18.75 times 3 gives me $56.25. And when I add all those together, I get 92.25. Step by step by step. Once again, it's a story problem, so I need a label, and it's dollars. All right, so once again, rewatch this video as many times as you need. Write down the notes, okay? Write them down. Make sure your paper looks like what I have on the board, and then go back and rewatch it, and don't worry about writing anything. Just listen and watch along is what I'm doing, because these are not difficult as long as I can follow the order of operations. So you have 2 through 12 on the front page on page 275, and 4 and 16. 16, notice it says to persevere. That means it's a little challenging, but I don't think any of you will not be able to do it. I think all of you can be successful if you're willing to just kind of step outside the box and think about what it's asking you to do. If you have questions while you're doing your work, please raise your hand and let us know.